say I was as optimistic as Danielle, and I think I'm just having a moment where all my trauma is coming back from 2016 in the Javits Center. But I think the bottom line right now is that there are people still voting. There are people still online in Georgia. So if you are in Georgia and you are online, do not leave the line. You can still vote, particularly the folks at Morehouse and Spelman College, which that's young Black people on that line. So stay in line if you are on the line, and make sure that your vote is cast and counted, because it's going to matter. I mean, I think that that's what the lesson of this midterm elections is. We see after 2016, no one taking things for granted anymore. No one really looking at the polls and then waking up today and being like, I'm just going to skip voting. Don't really need to do that. Like, that was not the energy I felt throughout the day. But that's also true on the Republican side. Unfortunately, there was a lot of Trump's racist rhetoric towards the end there that appears to have worked in some of these redder rural areas, and that's very unfortunate. And like Danielle, I think the long-term strategy is to grow the electorate, change the makeup of the voters, and perhaps the next piece of strategy for Democrats will be to do the best that we can to win back the state houses along with these governors' houses, so that the redistricting isn't so terrible the next time around. So it makes it just the terrain a little bit easier for Democrats in the future, and also restoring the Voting Rights Act. I mean, this is the second election where it is so patently obvious that the Supreme Court decision gutting the Voting Rights Act in Shelby County is the most important thing that has happened in maybe our lifetime in terms of elections, in a negative way, or at least in my lifetime, because it's clear that without that protection, Republicans like Brian Kemp are going to try to make sure that Black and brown people are not able to cast their votes. And it's so patently blatant, the level of cheating and gamesmanship on the Republican side. And as Jess always says, we're on the side of the angels. We want more people to participate in the process and just add it up and see who wins. But the fact that they can't win with everybody being able to cast a ballot easily shows you just how,
morally bankrupt
they are, and their lack of ideas and plans and any policy proposals that will get people excited about Republicans other than racism. So that's kind of where my head is at. It's sort of a mixed bag, because I'm both dealing with the trauma of 2016 sort of creeping up right now. I'm like, I'm triggered. I'm processing all of this, because I don't want to either be too cynical or too optimistic, because I don't know what's going to happen. So because 2016 was just the shock of that, it hurt my physical body. I'm just trying to prepare for that. I'm bracing for impact, basically. But look, I think, the governor's races we were able to win tonight in Illinois, Rhode Island.
Won governor, yes.
Right. So there are some good signs. And then there are also some signs that I'm surprised, Ben Jealous in Maryland wasn't able to pull that governor's race out. So there are some positive signs and some worrying signs. But again, it's early and people are still voting. So any analysis that I have is probably going to be outdated in an hour.
Now, let me just put the number out for listeners who want to give a call as well. 866-99-SIRIUS is our number. Also, Joe Manchin now projected as the winner in West Virginia in the Senate, a Democrat hold there. Jess McIntosh, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are I am happy to see that we are finally having a conversation about our messed up voting laws, our messed up voting regulations, and voter suppression as it is happening. In 2016, we did not talk about voter suppression until months after the election, when the truth is more Black people were taken off of the rolls in Wisconsin than the margin of error. We went through blaming everybody from Hillary on down before we got to the fact that no, in fact, it was voter disenfranchisement. What we're seeing this year is that it is happening across the country. However, it's not okay to talk about it without also saying there is a solution to it. Otherwise, it's just demoralizing. So if you are trying to vote, if you are waiting in line, if somebody is telling you that you cannot vote, that you are not on the rolls, that the line needs to disperse because it's time to go home, whatever cockamamie thing they're coming up with, you call 1-866-OUR-VOTE. And that is the team of lawyers and voter protection, nonpartisan, either party. They are there to help to make sure that you vote, which is again, what Zerlina was saying, how I know that we're on the right side. If we could have automatic voting.
Why can't we vote on our phones?
I'm so confused
You
about
don't want
that.
that? Russia's going to
there might
hack
be
that.
some hacking, but
Russia already hacked us, and you know
automatic
what? And
registration.
I still couldn't
everyone
text.
should be
No,
registered.
but they didn't hack the voting systems. They hacked the people.
That we
Not
know
yet.
of. I want to go back to the ka-chunk machines in New York, the ones with the satisfying noise at the end.
the
and
lever. I need
ballot,
the lever.
And I can see my ballot. And I mean, I went through a recount in 2008. I was on the Franken recount. I want a paper ballot. Like, you need to be able to see the thing and count the thing and be able to look at it and try to determine voter intent from it.
But
You can't do that on a touch screen.
what if we could vote on our phones, but it like printed out our ballot somewhere?
Just I don't trust the
If someone
ether.
takes your phone and they vote
But,
for
like,
you,
but
they
just
got
listen
you on
to
your phone.
Oregon.
Like, you voted for Trump? Why would you do that?
Just
Like,
look
I'm
at
just
Oregon.
Taking all my ideas, like in real
Oregon,
time, guys.
Oregon is 100% vote by mail. They don't
That's
even
right.
have an election
I
day
like
in
vote by
Oregon.
mail. I
like
You
that.
have months. They mail it to you. It comes with a little like prepackaged stamp.
And you're
you
registered
return.
as soon as
You're
you're
registered
18
as soon as
and
you're
get your
18.
your
It should be
license.
automatic registration.
Now,
That's
Dino
why progressive
Badala,
government
We
matters.
like Oregon.
your assessment of the night so far.
Well, we've been here live for the last 3 hours covering it, and we've been watching it in real time what's happening. I will say this, that the predictions are still the Democrats will pick up the House, and I think that is so fundamentally important. It cannot be overstated. Having every chair being a Democrat, controlling legislative agenda and oversight agenda, which is so important, the oversight, because we can look at things such as Ryan Zinke violating the law now, Secretary of Interior, to Emoluments Clause violations. I had Congressman Ro Khanna on last night from California saying, we're going to make them vote on Medicare for all. We're going to vote on climate change. We're going to vote on raising the minimum wage. And they have to vote against it. But even it'll pass. And we're going to say, vote for us in 2020. And these become law. So I think it's so important. The Senate, I never thought we were going to win. I wanted to. I never thought. We're going to pick up 4 to maybe 6 or 7 governorships. And for certain, is that me? That's me talking to
I'm
myself.
getting ready to tweet the link to folks. Sorry.
And here's the thing about the governor's races. Look at some of the governor's races that if we pick up, like Wisconsin, Tony Evers, who's going to beat Scott Walker, I hope, is going to expand Medicaid. It immediately affects people's lives. It helps people. In Georgia and Florida, the same thing, if we can pull those out. So I wish we could have won the Senate. I think it's going to be such a tough challenge from day one. The House was going to be ours and some governorships. Our Democratic bench gets bigger. People get to know us, and we can talk about policy and legislative agenda. So key for 2020, showing people what we're really about on a policy level.
Mm-hmm. All right. We are going to come back and go through all of this again and see where we are, and of course take some calls as well. I also want all of our listeners to know we're also going to be joined by Democratic candidate Harley Ruda, who is running in California's district in which Dana Rohrabacher, a Republican, has consistently won the election, Laguna Beach area in Orange County, and where Harley Ruda is set to upset him tonight. California, of course, still voting, so we're going to be speaking to him as well. When we come back, SiriusXM Progress, our live coverage of the midterm elections in 2 minutes.
Progress presents
On SiriusXM Progress 127.
This is Progress Presents
on SiriusXM Progress 127.
Welcome back to our special coverage of the midterm elections here on SiriusXM Progress 127. I'm Michelangelo Signorelli, and I'm joined in studio tonight for our coverage by Danielle Moody-Mills of Woke AF and Dino Badala of the Dino Badala Show. Some news just a little while ago. Mike Braun projected to be the winner in the Indiana Senate race, beating Democrat Joe Donnelly. Another pickup for Republicans in the Senate. And in the House, we're still waiting on many races. Of course, people are still voting. Democrats have picked up two, one in Florida, Donna Shalala, and also in Virginia as well. Joining me right now is Harley Ruda, who is running in California's 48th congressional district, coastal region of Orange County in California, Southern California. And he's been on my show several times during this election cycle. He is running against Dana Rohrabacher, Republican, Trump supporter, Russia sympathizer. We've talked about all of it. And in California, of course, the polls are still very much open and people are getting out to vote. Harley Ruda, welcome to our coverage tonight.
Hey, guys. Glad to be on the show again. Thank you.
Tell us a bit about what you're seeing out there, what you're seeing in the district on this last day, the day of voting, and as you obviously are talking to people and, still doing what candidates do, which is trying to get the vote out.
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing here that we're seeing across the country, a huge voter turnout. Potentially the largest midterm voter turnout in the history of Orange County. And we're excited about that, but we also know we're in for a tight battle, tough race here, and we still need to get our voters to the polls. So if you're listening to this and you haven't voted for me for Congress, please get to the polls and do so.
Earlier, I was reading that Rudy Giuliani was doing robocalls supporting Dana Rohrabacher. They seem to be, Republicans seem to be pouring everything they can into saving this seat. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think there's obviously a lot of resources from a lot of different directions have come in for this race. This race has actually ended up being one of the most expensive congressional races in history. Somewhere probably north of $30 million will have been spent on this through the primary and the general. So a lot of outside folks are trying to help keep Rohrabacher in there, and we're doing everything we can to make sure we send him into retirement.
Talk a little bit about what you're seeing so far in the election returns. It's still early, of course. People are still voting on the West Coast. Many states still haven't come in yet. Not many projections. Democrats have picked up a couple of seats. What do you see happening so far?
So the only thing we have that we can really rely on at this point are the mail-in ballots, and they are running extremely well ahead of what we saw in 2014 and 16 as well. And in those numbers, there are some encouraging numbers, especially with young voters and with Latinx getting out to vote. But across the board, the energy is up. So we're seeing Democrats running ahead. We're seeing Republicans running ahead, independents as well. And it's really going to come down to, what's the breakdown in those areas? Who did they actually vote for? And if we poll the Democrats as we expect, poll the majority of the independents, and poll over some moderate Republicans, we've got a great shot here.
What do you think so far of seeing some of these races that are closer than some people had thought? Some of the Senate races in Florida right now, governor's race, Donald Trump going full force with his very racist attacks on immigrants in the last day or two. Is that something you're thinking about? Is that something in the last week or a couple of weeks? Is that something you're thinking about? Is that something that you have been taking on in your race, worried that will affect voters in your district?
Sure. I think we're all worried about just the tone that President Trump has introduced into the elections. It's something we have never seen before, let alone from the President of the United States, and it's unfortunate. But it also is a clear reminder as to how important this election is and how important it is for those who have not voted, who do not agree with his behavior, to get to the polls and vote, because this is your country. Have your voice be heard.
Absolutely. We want to really wish you the best and tell everybody out in California, get out and vote. It's so important. Those California races, yours is among several that are really critical and in districts that Hillary Clinton won and where we expect, many people to come out and make sure their voice is heard in speaking up against these candidates and against Donald Trump as well. So I want to thank you so much for joining us again today.
Hey, thank you, guys. And again, I hope everybody gets out there. Consider it your civic duty. Consider honoring those who have served in the armed forces, the men and women, many who have given the ultimate sacrifice so we could vote. So get out there and vote.
Absolutely. Harley Ruda, folks, a Democratic candidate running for Congress, California's 48th district. Those of you in the Huntington Beach area and Laguna Beach area, get out to vote. So important right now. Dean Obeidallah is here in studio.
We've now picked up 2 more House seats. We're down to 19 to taking control.
What are these 2 seats, Dean?
One was Pennsylvania. We're going to take 3 to 5 in Pennsylvania because the Supreme Court over there ruled the map was so grotesquely gerrymandered, it was unconstitutional. So they redid the whole map. So even every expert said we're going to take 3 to 5, maybe more. One was definitely there. I can tell you right now, though, what's very exciting is in Texas, there is over 70% in. I know it's a really big state, but Beto is up by 2 points still, with over 70%. And on some level, the idea of beating Ted Cruz would lift spirits across the nation.
I think that would lift the angels.
It would make the angels
my voice
sing.
And my voice,
and yet we don't want to get our hopes up
I'm not
too
gonna
much,
get my,
right?
No, it's too early. It's much
if there's
too early.
nothing else that elections have taught me is not to get my hopes up.
But by the way, with the 19 seats, that does not include yet what I've seen in New Jersey, where there's a good chance to pick up 1 or 2 seats there. There's another race in Virginia that's really close. So let's see, in their states, there's races across Virginia and the Midwest, and Harley Ruda was just on. You've got other Republicans.
We've got at least 7 seats in California. Hillary Clinton won those districts, and then the map expanded to a few more seats that Democrats really were primed to pick up in California. In New Jersey, at least 2. Tom Malinowski leading right now. They're obviously still early in the ballot counting. But I want to get back to the Beto O'Rourke story in Texas. I mean, with 70% of the vote in, 51% he's at, it's pretty extraordinary, especially that a little bit earlier, very early, he was leading by 52, and then you expect it to tighten up. And when it got to 52% of the vote in, they were at 49, and that's when you expect, okay, all these conservative counties are coming in. Now it's at 70%. He shot up to 51. I think it's what people have said from the beginning, that even if he doesn't pull it out, it's going to be very close. And something will have been created in Texas, to get back to Danielle's point, that isn't going back. You can't put that back in the bottle. Texas really needed to organize. To get within a couple of points like this is amazing.
I think that, Texas right now is a really great example of the fact that the electorate is changing. The people, the demographics of Texas are changing, and they are invested in wanting to have have leadership that actually matches the demographic of the state. And I think that Ted Cruz has really shown himself to be, in my humble opinion, an absolute joke. Like, I honestly don't know. If I were from Texas, I would be embarrassed that he is my representative. I don't know anything that Ted Cruz has offered anyone other than rhetoric and platitudes. And I think that Beto O'Rourke, he really has energized the people. He really has inspired them in a way. I mean, look at this. To come out and to raise, what did he raise? $38 million, right? In a quarter? Yep. That shows you energy. That shows you impact. And to, however things turn out tonight, what we know to be true is that the electorate of the United States is changing. It is shifting. And this midterm election is just a preview to what is going to happen in 2020.
And also, not only is the electorate changing, the Democratic Party today, the candidates we fielded in 2018, you can be proud of that they look like America. And the GOP candidates look like Donald Trump. And in the long term, that's not the way you want to go. Look at the first we're making tonight. Ian Presley is elected to Congress from Massachusetts, the first African-American woman not only elected from Massachusetts, from the entire New England region. You're going to have Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, two Muslim-American women getting elected. The very same people Trump tried to ban from this country. In fact, Ilhan Omar is a Somali refugee. She literally would be banned today if she was trying to come to this country, yet she will be in Congress instead. We had a record number of women who run for office. And when everything comes in, I think we'll have a record number of women in Congress, mostly Democrats, a few Republicans as well, but mostly Democrats who ran in response to Donald Trump. So, look, I want us to win the Senate very, very much just so we could sleep better so that Donald Trump could not confirm another Supreme Court nominee. But that was always a long shot. Winning the House and winning some of these governorships is a major, major victory. And we're not there yet. And so if anyone's listening in California, please, you've got time. Go out and vote. Your votes are going to decide.
And in Washington as
Right,
well,
the whole-
we've got some very tight
The West
races.
Coast.
And in Washington State, some pickups. Now, something I want to point out that people are not even paying attention to, but Dean, it gets to, you're focusing on the Senate. An African-American man is leading the Mississippi Senate race as we speak right now. Mike Espy is at 41% of the vote, and Cindy Hyde-Smith is at 40% of the vote. Chris McDaniel, who is like a far-right conservative who's also in the race, you know, it's a jungle primary kind of race, he's at 16 or 17%. So it looks like there's going to be a runoff in Mississippi. But to see the Democrat and an African-American man doing that well tonight is great. And a runoff, you know, would be,
You never know.
You never know what's going to happen. And when we all can focus on that race later on in December, pretty amazing to see.
And, you know, when you also look at some of the governorships, it would bring me no level of joy to see Chris Kobach in Kansas lose. And right now he's down by 14 points with about 40% of the votes in. In Kansas, he was neck and neck there. And Chris Kobach is the Brian Kemp of the Midwest, a man who tried to disenfranchise and did disenfranchise African Americans and others who might vote against him. But I don't want to overstate it. I think we could see a Democrat win in South Dakota tonight for governor. We could see in Nevada. Wisconsin, knocking off Scott Walker would be more than symbolic. That would say a lot. That would say Democrats are winning in places they used to win, that we should be winning in the Midwest. We're going to win Michigan tonight, Illinois, New Mexico, and Maine. And we already won Pennsylvania for governor. So we're taking some of the states in the middle away. New Mexico had been a Republican governor. It's open seat. We're flipping those four. So we're going to at least 20 Democratic governors. I think we hopefully end up with 22, 23.
And
24.
it looks like Carlos Corbello could lose in Florida. He's down right now with 93% of the vote, and Republican in that Miami-Dade district, which it would be pretty significant. I'm Michelangelo Signorelli here with Danielle Moody-Mills and Dean Obeidallah. Special coverage of the midterm elections. 866-99-SIRIUS is our number, 866-997-4748 if you want to join us. Let's go to the phones. Mario is in Florida. Welcome to our special coverage, Mario.
Hey, Mike, appreciate you taking my call. I just want to say, man, until white people, I'm talking about here in the state of Florida, and probably this exists all over the country, until white people decide that they're going to do the right thing and they're going to stand up and they're going to stop voting against their interests. And the minority people, the people of color, women, we can't do it all. The white people have to be called out for some of this voting that they're doing. This race in Florida should not be as close as it is. There's no way that DeSantis had even a grasp on the issues. I watched the whole thing. I'm right here. He didn't even know anything about any of the Florida issues. Gillum is clearly more qualified. And this is what happens tonight. But I'm not surprised. As a teacher, I have always thought that the majority of white teachers are liberals. They're not. I lost a lot of friends the night that Donald Trump was elected. I found out some of these people that I had been associated with as a teacher, fellow teachers, colleagues, they were Trump supporters. They voted Trump, said one thing, pretended to be liberal. They're a member of the union, but they voted against their own interests. Until we call out the white people, and that's exactly what I'm saying tonight. We got to call out these white people for doing the wrong thing. It's not the minority. It's not the women of color. It is white people, men and women.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mario. You've said it so well, and it is exactly what we see happening all the time. And I want to ask both Danielle and Dean as well about this, because do you think that in Florida, we saw these polls that showed Andrew Gillum leading by quite a bit. We saw Nelson a little bit ahead. Do you think that in the end it was people going in the booth and racism playing out? Or do you think, as we were talking about earlier, there's a real institutional voter suppression situation going on in Florida? We've had Rick Scott as the governor there. We've seen this now. This is the second time we've seen this, like in 2016 with Hillary Clinton, where they're ahead in the beginning and then all of a sudden something happens in the end and it all switches. What do you think?
I mean, I think that this is a both and situation, right? I think that it is a combination of the perfect storm of voter suppression and the idea that America was always found on racism, right? Like the state of Florida is incredibly racist. It is broken up by, you have a large Latinx population that is Cuban, that is relatively conservative and bases a lot of their vote on their religion. You have which is Catholicism, which is wrapped in anti-choice. You have the Haitian population that is there. You have Black folks Black Americans that are there. There is a very big mix of folks, but Florida as a whole is largely conservative. And I think that until we have, like, as Mario was saying, deep conversations about racism, about its roots, about white supremacy, and about the fact that, a lot of white people will vote against their own best interests, will cut their nose to spite their face as long as a person of color or a woman does not get ahead, right? Like, that is what they do. And so I think that we have serious conversations that we've started to have in this election that we did not have in 2016 about voter suppression, about the tricks and the tactics that Republicans across this country are doing to ensure that they limit the electorate, right? Like, I think that what is interesting right now about Florida is the amendment that was passed, right, that allows felons who did not commit murder or did not.
I think it passed with 65% of the vote.
which is
remarkable.
Which is remarkable. Like, that is remarkable. That will do a world of difference in 2020 come the presidential election. Just think about this. I have people call into my show all the time and they say, Danielle, I was convicted of a felony and here I am. I served my time. I did what was asked of me and I still am not right. I still am not a full citizen back, in the good graces of the United States. Why is that? And I feel like if people serve their time, then you should be restored, right? It should be rehabilitated. So the idea that the state of Florida, and let's also be clear that this is a way to keep people of color, a majority of which are incarcerated, to keep people of color, Black men in particular, out of the electoral process, right? And in Florida specifically. So the idea that we can restore this, I think that this is showing some progress.
It is, because when you think about it, the race for governor is neck and neck between Andrew Gillum and Ron, horrible DeSantis, who's just not a bright guy at all. It just shows, I don't know how he got in the Ivy League schools. But in any event.
I have an idea.
Right, but you have that at 50-50, right? And you're going to say, well, there's some race that plays a component. You have a black candidate. But then 65% of Floridians did the right thing. Almost 2/3 of the state did the right thing in restoring the rights of convicted felons who are not violent to have the right to vote. And this is a law that harkens back to Jim Crow, this one, because it was an absolute bar on convicted felons. Only 3 states left that had, and this was one of them. So what do you say about that? I mean, those other 15% who voted for that, knowing that people of color are the ones that are going to benefit from this because they've seen all the studies as well. Is there a chance to reach some of them? Because that's what I'm hoping. Because believe me, I'm not always just looking for a silver lining, but I try to find it. But it's right in my face. I'm like, look, something happened here that's really, really good. How do we reach that other 15% to support our Democratic candidates? That's my question.
I want to just put out some very interesting results coming in. New York, 11th House District, Staten Island, little sliver of Brooklyn, the only Republican in New York City, Dan Donovan. He is down right now with 79% of the vote in. Max Rose at 51%. Dan Donovan at 49%.
Wow. New Yorkers came out and voted today. I mean, we were talking about it
New
earlier.
York,
Big turnouts.
11. And I'd like to check on New York 27 with Nate McMurray as well. Maybe our producers can all look that up. Nate McMurray against indicted Chris Collins, the guy who was running as a zombie. But getting back to Florida, I just again, these polls were off, and then they're telling us that these Trump supporters came out in the same day vote. And that threw them off, that they didn't turn out in the early voting. What does that tell us about that state and what's going on? Is it just that?
It's hard for me to know exactly what percentage of people involved are voting because of race and how many are voting for many other issues, because there are people who are truly racist, and we know that. There's no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. There's others who are subconscious. There's others who are just moved by the idea of having a right-wing governor who might usher in their version of Christian Sharia law, as I call it, or might act like they're a tax plan or whatever it might be. I don't know how you parse it together. What I do know is about having a concerted effort by Democrats to focus on fighting voter fraud, voter suppression. And the only chance we have is the court system, because if they control the governorship and they control the legislature, you're not going to change it that way. And it's using our courts. And I don't mean the Supreme Court. I mean local courts, and then the courts of appeals down there. Because the Shelby decision, Shelby County, which gutted the Voting Rights Act, is haunting us in a way that the people who sacrificed their lives, not even intentionally, they were just trying to vote to get the Voting Rights Act passed. It is all in vain because of the Shelby County decision by the Supreme Court, Republican-controlled Supreme Court. So the only way I think of changing that and making that the focus is through the court system. There's no other way around it.
But look what Trump has done to the court system. Look what Republicans have done to the court system. And that is something that Democrats have never got a hold on being able to have a conversation around and have any messaging around, right? Like we're so very narrow when we have conversations about elections that we're always looking at just the House and looking at just the Senate, and we never pay attention to the governorships, the state races, and the attorney generals, and all of these things that are in play that matter at the end of the day. These judicial races that matter, right? That are making the decisions for the rest of our lives. And I don't know what it is about Democrats that are unable to have that conversation, that are unable to part and parcel like what people need to be paying attention to. But when you say, Dean, oh my goodness, the courts matter. And I think about the right-wing courts that are being created, not from the Supreme Court down, that is disconcerting to me. Right?
I agree, it is. It very and the only way to change it is to win elections. And it's hard. I get it. It sucks.
We're going to come back and go through some more of these races and projections, some very interesting developments happening, and take some of your calls as well, our special coverage of the 2018 midterm elections. I'm Michael Angelo, Senior Elliott on SiriusXM Progress. We're back in 2 minutes.
Progress presents
on SiriusXM Progress 127.
This is the home of the resistance. This
Always
is
BTs.
Progress Presents on SiriusXM Progress 127.
I'm Michelangelo Signorelli, our special coverage. Danielle Moody Mills here from Woke AF, Dino Bidala from the Dino Bidala Show. Fox News, folks, is projecting the Democrats will win the House tonight. Fox News is projecting
Okay.
that the
Well,
Democrats
I will tell you,
Okay.
the House
MSNBC,
tonight.
MSNBC a half hour ago had us at a 65% chance to win the House. And just before we went to commercial, they moved it up to over 80%. So they're seeing returns in some other races that may talk about the race in New York. That's remarkable. No one expected that one with Dan Donovan. People won't know the name Dan Donovan. He's a quiet member of Congress, a Republican, the only Republican in the New York City delegation. And it looks like he might lose.
Yeah, that's right. Max Rose, I had on my show a couple of months ago. And, you know, he was somebody who Democrats were hoping they could, you know, help get over the finish line, but he was a few points down. And Trump endorsed Donovan in a big way. Donovan had promised to put Trump's and Pence's photographs in every post office, and finally, you know, Trump backed him. But that's a big pick off there. And then 33 Democrats right now, 33 Democrats leading in Republican-held seats right now across the country.
Mm-hmm.
Jared Polis just projected to win the governorship in Colorado, the first openly gay man who is a governor. We already have Kate Brown in Oregon, who is running tonight for re-election as first openly gay woman, actually bisexual woman, but Jared Polis would be the first openly gay man. So a lot of races still out. And Dean, you were seeing some as well up on the screens that
There's so many screens, Michael. They're everywhere. There's screens everywhere. Look, there right now. I want people listening not to lose any kind of excitement or enthusiasm.
I just want to tell people, Nate McMurray, 51-47 over Chris Collins, just a few points in, few percentage points in.
But I want to make the point about how big it is to win the House, because it almost was baked in by the media that we're going to win the House. Folks, we have not controlled the House since 2010.
Right.
Since
8 years.
2010.
Yeah.
We've had to sit there as they've done Benghazi, as they harassed President Obama. They did every investigation they want, and Democrats could not even subpoena someone without the consent of the Republican chair. Picture Adam Schiff as House Intel chair. Devin Nunes gone from there. Every Democrat, every Republican chair gone. All Democratic men and women as chairs, setting the agenda legislatively, oversight, and subpoena power. No more nice warm back rubs for Don Jr. You bring him in front in the committee, and America gets to watch him be questioned under oath for any wrongdoing in the future. And Donald Trump for the Emoluments Clause violation. And Ryan Zinke now, and the list goes on of people. This is going to be remarkable, and Trump has not had any check on him for 2 years. He's had a complicit Congress that has given up and forfeited their obligations they're charged with under the Constitution. Finally, we're going to have closer to a checks and balance on this government. This is remarkable. No legislation gets passed that Democrats don't like. It's over for him.
Now, joining us right now from Texas, where there's a lot of excitement, our very own Jorge Olivares here from SiriusXM Progress. He's down covering Beto O'Rourke's campaign. Hi, Jorge.
Hey, how's it going, you guys?
Tell us what's going on down there.
So I wasn't expecting just how personal this was going to feel for me, but it really has. I'm from a border town. This is a border town. And the people that I've spoken to could very well be members of my family. There's obviously a significant Latino population here. And the excitement here is nothing like I've ever seen. And I think I'm saying that also as somebody who's very much involved in a community that looks like this. But when I arrived at the Southwest University Park, which is where the so-called thank you event party is happening.
You're in El Paso right now.
In El Paso, yeah. So Beto's hometown. And literally, it just went for blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks. You just saw throngs of people just gathered all over, carrying signs that are a lot of bilingual signs. And yeah, it's a sight to be seen. And I've went to a few Hillary rallies and a few Bernie rallies before this, and I don't think that the excitement that I see here even mirrors what I saw there. out of this world.
It's right now just too close to call. I mean, they are separated by merely a few thousand. They keep trading the lead at only 75% of the vote in at this point. It's pretty amazing. I mean, it of course would not be great if he didn't pull it out, but getting this close in Texas is a major achievement.
Oh, yeah, and you can see, based off the people that I've had a chance to talk to, they said that this is something they've never seen before, that the amount of enthusiasm that a single candidate has been able to get in Texas, let alone one that's their hometown boy, they're just amazed. And I'm amazed at the amount of people that are here. I think having grown up in a border community, a predominant Mexican-American community, there's one way to interpret how people view politics. And here, it's just the complete antithesis of everything that I've ever known. The cool part is I think they know very much that they're playing towards a bicultural community because everything has been a mix between English and Spanish. Even right now, there's a Latino rock band that's playing in Spanish. And like I said, a lot of the people that I tried talking to in the line were Spanish monolingual speakers. So there are people who just knew that today was going to be a day that they could definitely be a part of, and they didn't shy away from being a part of it.
That's really great to hear, and it's amazing to see the energy that he's unleashed all over Texas, and may have helped a lot of other candidates in Texas as well, because Gina Ortiz-Jones is right now, and still early in terms of what vote it is in, but she's now leading Will Hurd in the district that goes, from...
That's my hometown district.
Yeah, there it is. That's it. That's your district. She's now leading in the polls, which I think is surprising a lot of the pollsters. Again, it's still early, but that would be an amazing first as well. She would be the first open lesbian elected statewide in Texas.
Yeah, and it helps that she's a veteran. She's got a significant background behind her that supports the amazing candidacy that she has. I think a lot of people are upset with Will Hurd because of his association with the Republican Party because of what it stands for with Trump. And he has said a few things with regards to immigration that rub people the wrong way. And she's very much somebody who not only is supportive of the Latino community, but of the LGBT community in the Latino community. And that resonates well with people who are of my generation on the border.
Well, Jorge, we're going to check in with you again, hopefully when they call the race for Beto O'Rourke, we hope.
I know.
But we want to hear about more of the excitement down there as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. Essentially, it's at a baseball stadium, and it's being treated like a baseball game. There are people here, the concession stands are filled, there's beer being had. Like, it feels like an event. That's what it is. It's a capital E event. And the Beto campaign is treating it as such, and the people who have passed are treating it as such.
That's just amazing and great to hear. Jorge, thanks so much for jumping in here today and letting us hear what's going on there.
We miss you, Jorge.
We miss you, Jorge.
I'll be home tomorrow.
Maybe. Depends how the election goes.
Pretty exciting, it sounds.
Some really good news, though. Can I just tell you about Kansas? Because I've been focusing a lot on the governor's races.
First, two other races that Democrats have picked up. One in Michigan and one in Pennsylvania as well. So now 17 seats they need to win. Now, tell us about what's going on in Kansas.
First, there's a lot of governor's races, folks, that the mainstream media, they cover it on Congress, and I understand it's a midterm. And we're going to win a bunch of governor's races. I can't tell you exactly how much, but I can tell you we're going to win Michigan, Illinois, New Mexico, Maine, Kansas now. Chris Kobach, who was Donald Trump's boy, who he picked to head his voter suppression commission, went back to Kansas. He is down right now by 10 points with about over 50% of the votes cast in Kansas. I think it was almost 60%. And there's a Republican, Kevin Yoder, who is way down right now in his re-election campaign. And in New Jersey...
From Sharice Davids, who will be the first Native American lesbian in Congress if she's elected.
And our friend Deb Haaland, who's been on your show and my
16.
show. So we're down to 16 House seats to get control, folks. This is big. I want people...
We should be excited about this.
And MSNBC's probability has now gone up to 90%.
90%, folks, that we're going to take the House. Picture, I wish I'm going to make a list of all the chairs. My computer's dead. If I can use your charger for a second. I will come back, and then after we talk about it, and tell who the Democratic chairs will be of the committees. If that were now, that won't work for my thing.
Okay.
All right. We're gonna come
we'll
back
figure it out, folks.
with
We'll
our
figure it out.
with our live coverage here on SiriusXM Progress. After the 10 o'clock numbers, the 10 p.m. closings, we're going to have even more numbers. Wisconsin as well, we're waiting to hear on the race there for governor with Scott Walker. And now, they've called
Jersey.
Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey.
From Jersey,
and
yes.
Carlos Corbello has gone down in Florida.
This is good news. Jersey doing the right
thing. This is
amazing.
Mikey Sherrill in Jersey and Debbie
and Kansas Governor Lori Kelly's won. She's official.
There
we
it is.
We just beat Chris Kobach in Kansas. That's Trump's guy. She crushed him.
And Debbie Mukersel Powell in Florida beats Carlos Corbello. That's a major one in Miami-Dade.
Folks,
we now need 15
seats in the House.
And we picked up a governorship in Kansas. Chris Kobach down, and that's a big loss for Donald Trump.
And that was his voter suppression guy. Man, this is so that's 5 governorships right now.
We're going to come back after this break and cover more of what's happening on this exciting midterm election 2018. Back in a few minutes.
You're listening to Progress Presents Election Night 2018.
Welcome back. I'm Michelangelo Signorelli, and this is our live coverage of this midterm election that has had everybody with a lot of anxiety, and now the returns are coming in. And Democrats poised to take the House, which is a major win. Right now, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez making history, elected as the youngest person to Congress. This is so important for millennials and young voters who are really experiencing all of this for the first time and need to see that there's a check on Donald Trump. I'm here with Dino Bidala of The Dino Bidala Show and Danielle Moody Mills of Woke AF. Danielle, we were all so focused on Florida and how it kind of shifted, and we don't know where it is now. It's so tight, and we want to win Florida. We want to win these governorships. But seeing these races come in now for the House, seeing Kansas fall, the governor there, Chris Kobach, the Republican candidate, I should say, seeing that seat flip because it was a governor, now a Democrat taking control of that governorship, and seeing these other history-making candidates, pretty amazing.
You know, I think that it is important for us to keep perspective on what darkness actually looks like. And I think that, you know, I was saying this during the break, that it is so easy to become so laser focused on the big races, like you're saying, that the media has been paying attention to, and missing the bigger picture and missing all of the upsides of this. You know, Alexandria Ocasio, the idea that a 29-year-old woman who was a bartender not too many months ago is now a new congresswoman, 29 years old, a Democratic socialist entering like our Congress is amazing. That should give millennials, that should give Democrats, that should give radical progressives some deep hope. There is a lot that is happening, and what we know about progress is that it is slow, right? But that we know that we have the force, we have the wind of justice behind us, and I think that that is what people, the 16% that have never voted before in a midterm election, that have come out and voted. You can think to yourself, well, that's just a sliver. Well, you know what? 50 million people stayed home in the last presidential election. So the idea that over the past 2 years, that 16% of the population decided to get off of their couch and get into politics, to actually immerse themselves in the responsibility of citizenship, is important, and we should be cheering that on.
Absolutely. And as we now see more of these races come in, NBC News is saying Democrats now have a 95% chance of taking the House. And we're going to have more seats than we need to win the House. We haven't even had California, and they're still voting.
Right,
California
they're still voting.
And Washington State, and Nevada as well still has.
Oh, Elaine Laura won in Virginia too. That one may be in the mix. I just walked past. I just want to say, I'm not going to gloat too much. I just walked past the conservative channel, and Sean Spicer's there with them, and they look miserable. I'm not kidding. Spicy looks upset.
Did you take a photo?
No, he's in the fishbowl. So they are taking it the way, like, I'm telling you, this is a night of celebration.
All right.
The House. And we might get some. You know, there's the race. I'm really hoping that Greg Gianforte loses. Okay, can't talk about that. But I didn't know they were actually on air. They were just there. They looked unhappy. Greg Gianforte, the reporter the guy who slammed the reporter, that race was in a margin of error going into this election. So that's another one.
And it's really, I want everybody out there listening to jump in our discussion if they like. 866-99-SIRIUS is our number, 866-997-4748. In Florida, razor-thin margins separating the gubernatorial candidates. It's literally 49.5, 49.5 with 99% of the vote in. Very close race in the Senate as well, but in both cases, the Republican leading by several thousand votes. In Maine, already early numbers showing Janet Mills, Democrat, taking the governorship there. Another great pickup as well. So things moving now rapidly across the country.
for a moment, we were talking about this during the break, Michael, and we're talking about voter suppression. And whenever I see these numbers and they say, it's 20,000 votes, right? Where it's a point lead, right, between a Republican and a Democrat. This is where we need to be having the conversation about voter suppression. When we're talking about Brian Kemp in Georgia holding 53,000 votes in his desk drawer, right? These are the votes that matter. When these things are so razor thin, it's not that it's actually razor thin. It's that people have been blocked from their opportunity to use their voice and their ballot to vote, right? And so things shouldn't. If people could vote, would it be that razor thin? Go.
Some incredible news. Sharice Davids now called in Kansas.
Max Rose.
Max Rose on Staten Island.
Oh my gosh! Democrats are starting to run the table. Here's the weird thing.
The last New York Republican, Dan Donovan, defeated in New York City. Sharice Davids becomes the first Native American lesbian elected to Congress.
Wow.
And, one of only 2 Native American women who are going to be entering Congress. Just amazing stuff.
It is, but we're going to win the House, which is so important. They're going to extend their lead in the Senate. And that's not as meaningful because they already had control of every chair. Every committee was theirs. They set the agenda on their own. They were able to confirm judges. So I don't want Democrats to be like, okay, so they added 3 or 4 seats in the Senate. And they might. We will win the House of Representatives, and we have a chance now. So we flipped 5 governorships, and Heidi Heitkamp's lost. So that's over there. So we're losing another Senate race. So we're going to lose 5 or 6 Senate races. In all red states, though. It's not like they flipped any.
Well, let's see what happens in Nevada,
and
let's see what happens in Arizona, and let's see what happens in Florida. We still don't know. 866-99-SIRIUS is our number, 866-997-4748. You are welcome to give us a call and join our discussion here. I'm Michelangelo Signorelli with Dean Obeidallah and Daniel Moody Mills. Let's say hi to Pastor John in Connecticut. Hi, Pastor.
Pastor John.
Hey there, guys. I want to congratulate all you for the great work that you all been doing.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Vote blue no matter who, right, Pastor John?
That's it, bro. Vote blue no matter
That's
who.
What he called me up and said that.
He said the same to me.
Yeah.
And I repeated it.
That's right. Listen, guys. I want to answer my good friend Dean. You're all my good friends, all of y'all. And you're great, by the way, on Sunday, all of you also.
Thank you.
Listen, number one, we've got to do this. Number one, we must keep campaigning. All right? You have to keep on reaching out. You must go to the white working class. You must show them the programs that are helping them. That's number one. Dean, I'd like you to talk to Tom Steyer and ask him to spend a few $1 million on commercials that say there's one race, a human race, that we're all Americans. We all have the same blood. We all bleed. You're red.
I like that. Right now,
I'm
pitching him just giving me a few $1 million. I'm going to ask them first, just give me a few million. Then I'm going to ask them to spend them on commercials after that. How's that?
Okay, here's the third thing.
Just give me a couple million, and then we'll talk about comorcials. So
I got you.
Go ahead. I'm kidding.
Here's the third thing. We need to get all the groups together. Indivisible, My Revolution, and be like CPAC and have regular meetings, and maybe once a month or every 2 months. We have to keep on reaching out.
Absolutely true. We need to organize in that way. There is no question about it. Pastor John, thanks so much for your call today. A Cook Political Report is saying this Staten Island win for Max Rose is a major upset for the Democrats. This was a district that voted 53-44 for Trump. And I got to tell you something. I grew up on Staten Island, and I know the district out there. I know the people out there. And I talked to my mother the other day, and I said, make sure you get out and vote. And she said, oh yeah, and I'm she had just come back from the beauty salon, and her hairdresser had said, I just don't know who to vote for. I don't know who these people are, but I don't like Trump. And my mother said, just vote Democrat all the way down.
Your mother's a smart woman.
And she went today to vote, and she told me it was really quiet. And I bet a lot of Republicans just stayed home. Because it's a Trump district.
And that's how waves happen a lot. It's not just your side coming out; it's the other side not showing up at all. And in this case, we were sort of joined at the battle. We had enthusiasm, but Republicans have enthusiasm every single midterm. I wrote about it, last time in 2014. Their enthusiasm was around 75, 76%. It's just slightly higher now with Trump. It's not like it's changed. We were in the 60s. We didn't care about midterms. So finally we woke up. The only reason we are winning the House back tonight, and we are, is because of the resistance. It's from a month and a half after the election, there was a women's march, and then a march against the travel ban in countless cities. And around
then the
this
March
nation,
for Our Lives with young people.
March for Our Lives, and the idea of a countless number of women, record-breaking, running for office, a Democratic slate of tickets that look like America. So the Republicans keep control of the Senate. They're calling that now on MSNBC. Not surprising at all. Oh, and that's unfortunate.
They've just projected Ted Cruz as the winner in Texas. So, yes, we still are waiting for Nevada and Arizona, but getting the House, having subpoena power, as you were saying, Dean.
Oversight power. We set the agenda. Every committee has a Democratic chair.
Absolutely true. And we're waiting on a whole bunch of races in which Democrats are leading and really, I think, look like they're going to take it in Virginia, in New York State, in Florida, in Texas as well. Many of these races still out and Democrats leading, which is pretty amazing to see. And there are many of the races that Democrats were targeting, particularly in the Midwest as well.
Well, I imagine in the Trump White House tonight, there's not a lot of joy because they had control of the Senate. And now they have the prospect of a chamber of Congress investigating Donald Trump on issue after issue. And if Robert Mueller were to deliver a report that recommends articles of impeachment, we know a Democratic-controlled House will at least have the hearings on that. And the whole nation will watch these hearings. And for them to make the case to the American people. And if enough Americans are convinced that Donald Trump should be removed from office, maybe you get it to the Senate. Maybe you actually have the impeachment in the House, which is, we all know, is just an indictment. It goes to the trial in the Senate. You need 2/3 to remove. But at least we will have a Democratic House that will take a report seriously from Robert Mueller and not just throw it in the wastebasket like the Republicans would. So this is huge for us. For America. It's actually good for America, frankly.
Absolutely true. I'm wondering what you're thinking about the fact that Republicans took Indiana in the Senate. We still are waiting to see what's happening in some of these other states, but we obviously are seeing Florida very close. Again, I want to get back to Donald Trump is going to tell himself that his closing argument worked for the statewide elections, right? That's what he's going to tell himself. And
Donald Trump is going to...
That was the argument, right?
Look, he tells himself a whole lot of things, and at the end of the day, a majority of them are not true. I think that the reality is that we were running, Ted Cruz in Texas was on his heels, right? And frankly, if the people of Texas had a lot of sense, he would be on his ass right now, right? And so the reality is that Beto O'Rourke, somebody who was relatively unknown, raised $38 million in a quarter and put Ted Cruz on a run in a red state. Okay, that just shows you.
And as I said, built something.
Yes, and built an infrastructure and built a system where people in Texas started to believe, right? This is not the end, it's the beginning. And I think that people need to understand that these states that have been reliably, quote unquote, red for so long are turning purple. They are changing. And these people, these emboldened candidates like Abrams, like Gillum, like O'Rourke, they are changing. They are showing the change that America is undergoing. And look, much like the birthing process, it is not easy. It is hard. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of power in order to change a system, in order to birth something new. And so we're at the beginning stages of that, right? And we have to understand And the Democrats right now, this is about the storytelling that comes out of this moment. This is about the storytelling that comes out of this midterm elections, and it's about how you spin it. And as a communications person, I know 1,000% that it's about how you spin it. And the way that I am going to tell the story is that the electorate is changing because we are chasing down these red states and they are running for their lives. So come 2020, it won't be this close.
Absolutely true. And red districts in blue states, some of these conservative districts in blue states. We're going to come back live with our coverage of the midterm elections here on SiriusXM Progress in 2 minutes.
Progress presents on SiriusXM Progress 127. This is the voice of the resistance. Progress presents on SiriusXM Progress 127.
Welcome back, folks. Democrats are moving to take control of the United States House of Representatives, subpoena power, and a check on Donald Trump. As these races come in tonight, a major upset in Texas as well. In the suburbs of Dallas, Pete Sessions, Republican, a loyalist to Trump, has gone down. Colin Allred has won.
Look.
Democrat Colin Allred has won.
This is official.
And Now it's official right now. The Democrats have taken
the House. We won
the House.
According to MSNBC.
There we are.
According to
MSNBC.
MSNBC.
To MSNBC, Democrats are projected to take control of the House.
The first time since 2010, the Speaker of the House will be a Democrat.
There we go. The wave sound. Now,
I wanted a drum
That was like a
roll.
mid-wave, which I guess is appropriate.
The official tally is that they need to pick up 10 more seats, and there are 23 seats where they are now leading and expected to pick up. So that looks like something, and we still don't have anything from the West Coast, California. So we're not just talking about Democrats winning the House. I think we are seeing the wave that's going to be much larger than the number of seats needed to win, because we're going to pick up more than 10 seats.
But still vote.
Absolutely.
If you're in the West Coast and you haven't voted yet, because I think their polling might still be open, get out and still vote. We need to pick up more House seats. And they're estimating now where we're going to be, but we could even blow that out and make this a big night.
So
Where the headline is the House, first time since 2010, controlled by Democrats.
And Dean, you were seeing some pickups in Pennsylvania as well as Michigan.
Susan Wild, who's been on our show, she won. And Michigan, there was pickups. It's going to be remarkable. We are winning red districts in red states, like in Texas with Pete Sessions, who we just beat.
Mm-hmm.
And replacing it, an older white man with a younger African American. And it says so much about, on a microcosm, how America is shifting. America is changing. And now Mitt Romney is going to win in Utah, which we knew that was going to happen. And I think perhaps he's emboldened to push back against Donald Trump a little bit more.
Well, but think about that, Dean, what you were just saying. Pete Sessions replaced by a young African-American man. Yoder, same thing, older white man in Kansas replaced by a young Native American lesbian woman. This is the new generation, as you were saying, Danielle.
And this is the fear. This is the fear that Trump stokes. This is the fear of the Republican Party. This is why they have placed so much attention and so much power in suppressing the vote and gerrymandering districts. This is why Donald Trump has done rally after rally to rattle his base and tell them that, you know what, the idea of America and whiteness and white supremacy is going to be replaced by these people of color, right? So when they see this happening, we see it happening, and we say, yes, the Democratic Party is going to look more like the American people. Republicans at that same notion cringe and say, no, America is supposed to be white and white men are supposed to be in power. This is a very real thing. So when we're talking about these replacements that are happening, this is exactly the fear.
That's right.
This is exactly the fear that Donald Trump has been stoking, right? So we have to really understand and come to grips with this, that none of this is by accident, right? That these people are making voters are making conservative changes in these districts. And I said to Dean, I said, well, what does it mean if we're making these moves in Texas in these districts, but, Beto O'Rourke didn't win the state? Everything is about incremental change, but this isn't incremental. This is actually Democrats. This is our wave. And I think that you have to look at waves differently, right? It wasn't a tsunamis like I kept predicting on my show. I kept saying that it was going to be a tsunami, right? This isn't a tsunami. It is in fact a wave. But to Dean's point, we haven't had control of the House in 8 years. So if nothing, folks, you need to hold on to the fact that Donald Trump will now have one check out of the branches of power of our government. There will be a check over the abomination that is coming out of this White House.
And there is going to be a different group of people who are going to be the face of America in the House of Representatives. We are going to see young people of color.
Yep. Queer people,
exactly.
Muslim people.
Muslim people. And
but by the way, to Danielle's point, going to this election, Donald Trump and the Republicans controlled the Supreme Court, the House, the Senate, and the White House. Leaving tonight, we get the House. So one of the three with legislative powers are connected there. the House and the Senate. We're getting the House. And of the 4, at least we have 1. At least there's a check now on the power of Donald Trump. This is so important. This is a lawless president. This is a man who does not believe the law applies to him, who thinks he's above the law, who is corrupt, who is a criminal, who should be criminally prosecuted. And now we have a chamber of Congress that can do the right thing. In that, plus showing America what we're about on substantive policy. They're going to have votes on minimum wage. As Congressman Connor told me last night, they're going to have a vote on $15 minimum wage. They're going to have a vote on climate change. They're going to have a vote on
right. And even
Medicare
if
for
the
all.
Senate doesn't take these up, it sets up for 2020
exactly.
what the agenda is.
Vote for us. We get a Democratic Senate. This becomes law. Here's what we want to do for America. So it's not just anti-Trump message, which is still an important message, but it's, here's what we're going to do for our fellow Americans. This, without the House, we couldn't do that.
No, and it's setting up for 2020. Now, some other news that just really thrills me. Kim Davis, that horrible woman who would not give out marriage licenses in Kentucky, she had lost her county seat clerk.
Praise him.
Seat. 866-99-SIRIUS is our number. 866-997-4748 if you want to join us in our conversation here. New Mexico governor also projected Michelle Lujan Grisham winning today as well. And
that was Susan Martinez. That was a Republican governorship that became an open seat. So we flipped that one.
That's right. That's another governorship that we've picked up. And it really looks like if Arizona comes in for the Democrats in the Senate, and Nevada comes in as well, Dean Heller comes down, I think we're also seeing a different kind of realignment in terms of the West and Democrats. And it's an interesting thing to look at, that sort of the Trumpism world is locking on the South, right? They're going to lock that South in because that's where it was the heart of the Confederacy, right?
Yes.
And,
not a coincidence.
but we could see a new realignment in the West.
We could, and right now, Scott Walker, the Republican governor, who has been there seemingly forever for 2 terms, running for a third term, with 54% reporting, he is losing 50.4% to 47.7%. to Tony Evers. And this, again, would be important. This is a man
enormous win.
This guy was pro-union, who wants to raise the minimum wage, who wants to expand Medicaid, which Scott Walker did not want to do. It has an impact on people's lives. So that's why these governor races, that if we can, like Kansas, the idea of expanding, we won Kansas tonight. So we flipped from red to blue, and they were all open seats, 5 states tonight: Michigan, Illinois, New Mexico, Maine, and Kansas. And we might get more before it's over.
That's right. And, of course, there are many more seats that we're winning. Mary Gay Scanlon in Pennsylvania as well. Chrissy Houlihan in Pennsylvania as well. Women picking up these seats, who many of these women were not in politics before.
No. And
many of these women rising up to stand up to Donald Trump. Susan Wild.
She was just a lawyer. She's a local lawyer, first time she's running for office.
I think that if there is any good that the Trump administration has done, is it has emboldened women. It has emboldened people of color. It has emboldened queer people to take the reins, to get off of the sidelines and say, you know what? I can do this job. If he can get into the presidency, I can do this job. I remember chatting with Stephanie Chirac, the president of Emily's List, a couple of months ago, and I said, I'm not feeling really good. I'm not feeling good about this administration. I'm not feeling good about what is happening with the Supreme Court. And she said, you know what, Danielle, there are 34,000 more women running for elected office than ever before. Like, we are up, women are up, and women are out, and they are running more than ever before. And if that is if there is nothing else that you can be excited about tonight, be excited about that.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what I think we're all excited about too here on SiriusXM Progress. We've had some of these candidates who've won on our show. I've seen some of the candidates I've had on my show who have lost tonight, and I feel bad about that. But I think they were enormous candidates. I don't think I interviewed seriously, and we've been interviewing challengers of going up against Republicans week in and week out for weeks now. I don't think I interviewed one person who wasn't truly brilliant and truly phenomenal in terms of a candidate. They all were, the field of people that Democrats put out there were pretty extraordinary. And I remember every time we would interview them afterward, I would say, I don't know how anybody could not vote for that person. And, you know, I'm sorry, obviously, that some of them lost, but to see people like Max Rose win, who we had on the show, and I know there are a few others that are going to be winning as well tonight. It really feels gratifying, too, because you feel like, you know, you really were part of that, too, helping to connect people, helping to raise money, helping to get the word out. I know you, Dean, had some of these people on as well.
We did, and we made a commitment to try to have as many Democratic candidates on. And I think it's important that we want to be a place where people can hear about progressives from around the nation, learn about the issues, but learn about the candidates. And I hope some people, you know, volunteered or even made a donation to some of these candidates. We were all in this together, and that was the sense of a community of progressives running together. And this Congress now, because of the Democratic wave tonight, is going to look so much more like America. It's going to be different in color, in sexual orientation, in faith. The same way America is evolving, our Congress is evolving. The GOP is not evolving. They're going to be, again, primarily white men. They're doubling, tripling down on what they have. And they will continue to do that, like all politicians, until they lose horribly enough to say we have to shift up and change things. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see. Arizona's still out there with Kirsten Sinema and McSally, but I'm very excited about what we're seeing tonight. I'm really hoping that we pull out some governor races like in Iowa. There's still so early reporting going on there. Looks like Ohio's not going to work out, but Alaska's in play. South Dakota, Nevada's still in play. Some exciting stuff can happen tonight.
There's even a House seat, the only House seat in Alaska, is suddenly in play. Don Young, who's actually the oldest or the longest sitting House member in the House, he is in danger right now in Alaska, and they're not even voting yet, I think. I don't even know did they even start voting.
And look,
yet?
Democrat Gretchen Whitmer won in Michigan, so that's official. I knew she was going to win there.
Governor's race there.
So that had been a horrible Republican. It was an open seat. So again, we've officially flipped from red to blue 5 governorships.
Yeah, and we're seeing now in New York State as well as in New Jersey, I think a lot of these results coming in now from upstate, we're probably going to get some calls on some of these seats upstate as well. And Democrats were targeting at least 4 seats in upstate New York, and there are at least 2 others in New Jersey that they were targeting as well. So this is still a very young night, even on the East Coast.
And Iowa was a state people really focused on for the governor's race. There's only 10% of the vote in, but the Democrat Fred Hubbell is winning 55% to 42%. I know it's early in the reporting, but that's a state that we really could pick up.
Yeah. We're going to come back with our live coverage here on Election Night 2018. I'm Michelangelo Signorelli with Dean Obeidallah and Danielle Moody Mills. We're back in 2 minutes.
Progress presents
on SiriusXM Progress 127.
This is Progress Presents
on SiriusXM Progress 127.
I'm Michelangelo Signorelli, and Democrats continue their march to take control of the House. NBC already projecting Democratic control. Fox News even projected Democratic control officially. There are a number of seats that are left for them to pick up, but they are winning in double those number of seats right now. And there are still elections happening on the West Coast. Of course, polls are still open. They close in less than half an hour, though, and we will get some big news. Joe Sudbay is joining me as well with Danielle Moody-Mills and Dino Budala. Joe Sudbay, who's going to be picking up coverage at 11 p.m. Eastern Time with Addie Stan. They're going to be here till 2 a.m.
God bless you.
Joe, you're in Washington. How are you feeling? 11 p.m. Eastern Time with Addie Stan. Oh, Joe, you there? I think we may not have Joe on the line. He's coming from our Washington studios.
He's resting. He's going to be on air for a really long time.
We're having some difficulties getting him right now. Two races upstate New York that I've been watching because I've just been so excited by Antonio Delgado, and I was so angry when John Faso had run that racist ad where he called him a big city rapper because he used to be a rap singer.
Yeah.
Like
Wasn't he also a
before
Rhodes
he was
Scholar?
a lawyer and a Rhodes Scholar.
Yeah, I'm so confused.
Right.
Yeah, I also wanted to be a gymnast when I was in elementary school. So, like, are we all going to be held to that standard?
I was going to be an astronaut, so he would accuse me of wanting to be an astronaut.
Yeah.
You know, astronaut runs for...
Well, with 24% of the vote in, he's up 10 points up there. And those would be that one and Anthony Brindisi, also upstate New York, against Claudia Tenney, who's a total Trump, like, nutbag. I mean, this woman said that all shooters, all school shooters are Democrats. Like, these are the crazy things she said. These two, I think, would be just symbolically for New York State to win these rural red districts would be enormous. And to have a man of color winning up there, where 1 in 5 people is a person of color, I think would be pretty amazing.
I mean, I do think that it is really amazing. And one of the things that I actually want to lift up from this election cycle too are the robocalls. Right? The racist robocalls that have come out all over the country, right? So upstate New York is one, Florida, Georgia, and all of these places where people of color have been running, right? And running successfully on message, on policy, are being attacked with these robocalls using monkey sounds, using the most stereotypical Jim Crow 1960s, anti-segregationist language. And I think that says a lot about how deep into the bag of tricks that Republicans have to go, right, in order to pull out anything, because they can't pull
and
out
the calls
their policy.
Were literally coming from Idaho.
Literally, you know what I'm saying? Like they are pulling so far into their bag of tricks of racism and stoking, all of these flames, because they can't point to policy. And I think that it won't just be symbolic. I think that it will be momentous.
Right.
I think that it will give Democrats the edge that we need when we win in these districts, in these areas, as we've all been talking about tonight, that are red, right? That are majority, white. When Democrats come in and Democrats of color have the boldness, right, and the passion and the mission to win in these places, that is what the future looks like. That is what we have to be moving towards, and not constantly looking behind us as to why did this happen and spending so much time on the Democratic autopsy, but looking towards the future and the new blood that we're invigorating ourselves with.
Absolutely. Now, I'm told Joe Sudbay is with us now from the Washington studios. Hi, Joe.
Mike, how are you?
I'm doing well. We've been kind of a roller coaster here,
right?
Because in the beginning, right, you like us were like, oh my God, this Florida thing, it suddenly was making us have that post-traumatic stress. We were like, oh my God, it was all coming back again. And we were thinking that was going to happen even across the country. But now we're seeing amazing pickups in Democrats' wave to win the House.
absolutely right. It's been the tide has turned. In the beginning, there weren't that many states that that there were that many competitive seats in. But now look what we've seen in Virginia, Pennsylvania. Max Rose, Mike. Max Rose. That's a big pickup.
Yeah, that was an upset for Trump and the Republicans on Staten Island.
And can I tell you something? I was jumping up and down when Chris Kobach lost. That is the most racist person. He's horrible.
Oh, my God.
Decades he has tortured immigrants in this country. He hates the LGBT community. He's a despicable human being, and he got trounced in Kansas. That's a big win.
Yeah.
A big win tonight.
And it really, again, just showed how far the reach is. I mean, nobody even thought about or was focused on Kansas, right? Nobody was looking at that race until very late.
Right. And it's a red state. That's a very red state. Also a great pickup, Sharice Davids in Kansas 3, new lesbian member of Congress. That's exciting. We have a gay governor, an openly gay governor, I should say, in Colorado. And so, Florida's rough. I mean, we can't pretend that Florida's not rough. I mean, now, it's really depressing to see what happened in Florida, but picked up a couple House seats. And now Florida is stuck with DeSantis for governor. He didn't even have a policy position on anything. And they chose that. Good luck to you, Florida.
Yeah, good luck, Florida.
Joe, what are your thoughts on the Senate and some of these races that obviously Democrats lost, and we're still waiting to see what happens in Nevada and in Arizona?
Right. Depressing to see some of these losses. I mean, Bill Nelson, obviously, in Florida, which we just said. And then in, Joe Donnelly. Those are tough states. You got to remember, this was supposed to be a year when the Republicans got close to 60 in the Senate. The person they spent the most money to defeat was Tammy Baldwin. They pummeled her with millions and millions of dollars, and she won convincingly. There were also two of the most egregious racists in the country. Corey Stewart. Yep. Corey Stewart, last year, before the Virginia election for governor, Steve Bannon was telling people that Ed Gillespie was going to win because he was more like Corey Stewart. He became a racist. He ran those ugly negative ads that were despicable. Not only did Ed Gillespie lose by a lot by becoming Corey Stewart lost by a lot tonight because of himself and because of his ties to Trump. The other one is Lou Barletta. Lou Barletta, for a long time, Lou Barletta used to work with Chris Kobach.
Running for Senate in
Pennsylvania. Trump wanted him to win. Trump spent a lot of time up there in Pennsylvania. He got trounced. So, that was a state Trump won. Let's not forget that. Trump won Pennsylvania. Trump won
Michigan,
right.
And Wisconsin. He thought he would win those Senate seats.
Absolutely did. He absolutely did. And they, and remember last year, a little over a year ago, we were worried about Tammy Baldwin and Debbie Stabenow and Bob Casey. They're in Sherrod Brown, another state that Trump won. So, yeah, did we lose in Indiana, which is a red state? Yes. Did we lose in Florida, which is, I don't even know how to describe Florida anymore, a racist state or whatever. I mean, they fell for it. Whatever that was, they fell for it. But we still have a few more to go and see what happens. But it's Mitch McConnell's going to have control of the Senate still, which means more bad judges. But it also means that the Democrats have the House, and it changes everything. We haven't had power for a long time.
Yep.
We haven't had power at all under Trump.
Yeah, and now Ann Kirkpatrick in Arizona projected to win another pickup.
Yep.
So, we are just seeing, I think, something like 6 or 7 more races that Democrats need to pick up. And, Joe, there are still so many out where the vote hasn't come in. And we were talking about the, races like upstate New York and in New Jersey, some rural areas as well. We're still waiting in the East Coast as well.
Right. And at 11 o'clock, California closes, and we have about 8 competitive House seats in California. And the early vote was looking great out there. So the absentee, they were vote by mail. So it was trending younger. And in California.
A couple
Yep.
of races in Washington State as
Yep.
well.
Yep.
NBC News breaking the story that Democrats are already saying they're going to call for Trump's tax returns. They're not waiting.
This is great.
Until even
They
getting
shouldn't.
the House.
They have to. They have to take it to him. They have to take the fight to him. They have to be aggressive, and this is how they do it. And that's great.
I want to see Democrats take the fight. I want to see Democrats, put their shoulders back, straighten up their spine, and like have some fire in their bellies, and which I have not seen outside of Maxine Waters in quite some time. So I am ready to see what they are going to do and what they're going to be about.
Mm-hmm. And Joe, even in Texas, Gina Ortiz Jones, who I just had on my show today, she was leading in the early vote against Will Hurd. We hope that stands up too.
Right. That was a race that the Republicans spent a lot of money in to defeat her. It's a tough district. It's a big district. I heard her on your show today. She's a great candidate. We'll see what happens there. But I'm also interested to see, and I've been so focused on the U.S. House and the Senate races, I want to start seeing what's been happening at the state level too, how Democrats are doing picking up seats in state legislatures as well, because that is so important. We've neglected them. The progressive movement, well, the National Democrats have ignored that for so long, but we had so many great candidates. And that creates such opportunity for us. One of the things we've seen, we know that voter suppression and gerrymandering work against us. We're going to come out of this with a lot more votes for Democrats. We should have a lot more seats in the House. We don't because of the shenanigans, and that happens at the state level. That happens at the state level. The voter suppression and the gerrymandering happen at the state level. We need to get more control.
Absolutely. Joe, we're going to come back with our coverage in a few minutes. Stay with us. And then, of course, you're picking it up at 11 p.m. when a whole bunch of other states come in, polls close, with Addie Stan as well. We'll come back in a couple of minutes with our live coverage of the 2018 midterms here on SiriusXM Progress. Just a couple of minutes.
Progress presents
on SiriusXM Progress 127.
This is the voice of the resistance. Progress presents on SiriusXM Progress 127.
I'm Michelangelo Signorelli here with Danielle Moody Mills and Dean Obeidallah and Joe Sudbay, who's going to be picking up the coverage at 11 Eastern Time with Addie Stan from the Washington studios. Is also with us right now. A few things just want to announce in terms of the state of play. A runoff in Mississippi will happen. Mike Espy, former Agriculture Secretary, African-American man, Democrat, tying with Hyde Smith, who is the Republican, and that's going to be an interesting runoff. Right now, Fred Hubbell leading with 44% of the vote in Iowa in the governor's race by quite a nice margin over Kim Reynolds. That'll be another pickup for the Democrats if that holds up. Dean, you were saying it looks like Dave Bratt may go down in Virginia.
House 7 district. It's Abigail Spanberger versus Dave Bratt, the guy who beat Eric Cantor, who's sort of a professor, but I'm not sure exactly. He's professorial, but way out to the right, is down with 99% of the vote in by 0.6, so less than 1 point. But Dave Bratt ran a really anti-Muslim, bigoted ad against Spanberger, who's not even Muslim, but she worked at a Muslim school as a substitute teacher for 1 year, years ago, and made it seem like she was tied to terrorism because she taught at a Muslim school for a year in America. Yeah. And this is unreal. So I'm hoping Spanberger
that would
prevails.
Be major.
That would be a big one.
Another major one. Also, upstate, Antonio Delgado, 42% of the vote in, 11 points up over Faso, and in New York 22 with 60% of the vote in, Anthony Brindisi leading with 7 over Claudia Tenney. So again, those are just some of the races still to come in the East Coast, and we're still waiting for California. Joe, anything that you've seen on your end, because it's so hard to keep up here?
Well, I'm keeping an eye on Maine right now, my home state. Really hoping that Janet Mills is going to be the new governor of the state. I think that having a Democratic governor in Michigan is so important, a really important state. Gretchen Whitmer won convincingly. And I know we're all keeping an eye on what's happening in Georgia, where, the leading vote suppressor in the nation is ahead right now. Brian Kemp against Stacey Abrams. So keeping an eye on that one, too.
It's been brutal and right. Horrible what we have seen. And Danielle, you were pointing out how in Texas, 59% of white women voted for Ted Cruz.
Yeah, this is what is being reported right now, that 59% of white women voted for Ted Cruz. And, and I just tweeted, I said, look, let's stop placing our hopes and dreams on white women to do right, because they ain't going to do it at the end of the day. And the reality is that they will be voting with their husbands, and their husbands are largely voting, with Trump. And that's just the reality. And so instead of paying...
We're sitting here.
Say the news, Danielle. What happened? Danielle's so excited.
As we're sitting here, Antonio Delgado projected the winner by CNN in that race upstate, and Anthony Brindisi projected the winner upstate New York, Joe.
Yay, this is great.
Those are
I'm
huge.
glad people who use racist ads are losing. If Spanberger wins, Abigail beats David Bratt, that would be great. And then the last one for me would be Amr Campanajjar running against Duncan Hunter. Hunter, right. One of the most racist anti-Muslim campaign against Amr, who's not Muslim, but he's Arab American, and vile stuff that everyone denounced. So that'll be much later in the night. And he can beat Duncan Hunter. Duncan Hunter's under indictment.
And I got to say, we're still waiting for New Jersey, where we might see just one Republican left in the entire delegation, maybe. But New York State right now, Staten Island, they just lost, and they lost 2 big upstate districts, large upstate districts, and there are still a couple out. I mean, they may get wiped out in New York State.
Donald Trump is making the Democratic Party great again.
Andrew Gillum just conceded.
In Florida, in the governor's race.
He's speaking right now.
And that is just...
That is really deeply, deeply unfortunate. Yeah, and the people of Florida, you should be ashamed of yourselves.
You could have had a great governor.
You could have had
a great...
You could have had a
really
great governor.
Dope. I mean, objectively speaking.
And DeSantis, who knows nothing about a goddamn thing. Yeah. You should be ashamed of yourselves.
Absolutely true. a night of just some major disappointments and then a major win, the House being taken by the Democrats. Joe, in 1 minute, 11 p.m., a whole bunch of states are going to close. You and Addie Stan will take it up from there. California and Washington are going to be called, and you'll be announcing a lot of races. Thanks so much for being with us, Joe. And, of course, Danielle Moody Mills, great being here with you. And
great
with
being
you,
here with you
Dino
guys.
Vidala. It really was great being with you guys, having to go through this whole experience.
I
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it.
I'd rather not be alone.
Our coverage of the midterm elections here on SiriusXM Progress continues in a couple of minutes with Joe Sudbay and Addie Stan from Washington.
One, two, three, four. I am cool. And we're going to have a young man.
This is Progress Presents Election Night 2018.
Good evening. Welcome back to Progress Presents, our election night coverage 2018. My name's Joe Sudbay.
And I'm Addie Stan, Adele Stan with Right Wing Watch and the American Prospect.
And I'm very excited to be in the studio with you tonight, Addie.
Likewise. We are more like virtual correspondents.
Right. We've done the show together, but always in different places.
Yeah.
So, Addie, when you came, we both decided that we felt a lot better at this hour than we might have a couple hours ago.
Right.
We are watching Andrew Gillum concede, which is a very sad and depressing turn of events.
Yeah, it's painful. It really is painful because, Ron DeSantis, oh my